I was waiting for it. Yeah.
I saw that little posture. Like,
It's
appreciated the opportunity.
yeah. This is Unrationed. My name's Evan.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Tony.
And Tony doesn't have his microphone set up yet, so his voice will sound all buttery here in a second.
How was that?
Oh, yeah. That's great. Okay. So we start every podcast off with our wild moments from the week. Josh, what you got?
So on Sunday, I have a buddy that lives up in Denver. We got together. He has a new kiddo, just a few months old. And then I brought Noah. So we hiked in this kind of open area, and it was just great. Two dudes and their kids hiking around, and Noah was hilarious. He was just a maniac, which was really, really fun to watch him running around. So yeah, just seeing a kid in open spaces, picking up sticks and rocks and wanting to jump over things. It was pretty great. Yeah, so we did maybe four miles or so, and it was lovely.
Tony, what you got?
I don't have a good one. It's my the best one I have is the full moon the other night. I think last week we had a full moon, and we took the kids outside just in the backyard and live in this place where we have the luxury of seeing stars every night. And so taking the little ones out there and having Sky, who's not yet 2, they're just like yelling like moon, moon. Like it's really lovely. That's the best I got.
Love it. This isn't my wild moment, but I also was so excited about that full moon. There's something about seeing it close to the horizon, which sometimes the moon is rising or close to the horizon in the middle of the night, but we were at this time of year when it's like close to the horizon at 7 p.m. before the kids go to bed. And I carried both of them out and stood on the back deck, and we stared at it for a good 60 seconds. It's great. So my wild moment has to do with this random rooster joining our flock of chickens. And so my wife's like, we can't have this rooster here. They're mean. This is the first time either of us have ever had chickens. We intentionally don't have a rooster. And she's like, we got to get it out of here. So 2 nights in a row, we shoot it away as we put the chickens in the coop. It's like, get out of here, go away, whatever. Got a stick. It knew it wasn't supposed to be there too. Like as soon as we walked in the little area where all the chickens are, it was like, and like jetted out. And my wife posted it in these groups to see if anybody wanted a rooster, these North Georgia livestock groups that she's in for tips on how to raise these chickens. People are posting roosters all the time, and nobody wants the roosters. So people end up just taking them to a field and dropping them off or whatever, which is probably how we got one in the first place. It's like somebody drove them around. Who knows? And actually, I think it was our neighbor that moved 2 months ago and had a rooster. There's a nice ending to this story. Anyways, there's this rooster. My wife's like, we've got to get rid of it. I want you to shoot it. I'm like, okay. If your wife asks you to go out and shoot something, it feels like the manly thing to do, to go get a gun and shoot the rooster. So I call my dad. I'm like, hey, Dad, can I borrow your shotgun? It's like, sure. So he brings over, I'm like, just the 20 gauge. I don't want to, black. Brings over a 12 gauge and a 20 gauge. Says, I don't have any ammo for the 20 gauge. So here's the 12 gauge. So I go down to my neighbor's house. He's got 20 gauge ammo. And he's like this man who I've had several conversations with, who's just who good old boy. And I mean that as a compliment, like reliable, trustworthy. If you ask him to do something, he's like there, a type of neighbor that everybody wants because you want him on your side and you don't want to not be on his side either. So I ask him for this ammo and he's like, "You're not going to shoot the rooster, are you?" And it's like the last thing I expected from him. And he's like, "No, don't," like trying to convince me out of it. So I get the gun, load it up, get in the yard, walk around, get the rooster out of the area with all the hens, and I'm staring at it holding this shotgun. And I could not shoot the rooster. It was like I was going through my mind. Tony and I had this meeting with somebody who had a World War II poster in their office, and they have it as a reminder to harden up because life for these people that went through very difficult things was very, very hard. Like we live it pretty easy. And I was holding this shotgun in my hand saying, "Harden up. Like, why can't you shoot this rooster?" But so then it sent me on this. This is a very long, wild moment for this week. It sent me on this journey of being like, well, this is actually the easier route to shoot the rooster. Like this violent act is easier than figuring out a way to get rid of the rooster. So like hardening up in this situation might not actually mean killing something. It might mean taking your time and figuring out a way to get rid of this where the rooster still lives, which could definitely be an excuse for my inability to pull the trigger and shoot a rooster, or it could be like not choosing violence as the easy way out, which is the way that I kind of took it in the moment. And I'm still leaning into that. I think if I really needed to shoot a rooster and there wasn't another way out, I would harden up and be able to do that. But there were so many other options, I couldn't shoot it.
So what you're saying is that you've adopted the rooster, you've put it in clothes, and you're actually it's actually the rooster started school yesterday.
It's in the coop. It's in the coop. So this is where it gets good. Then 3 days later, we get a knock on the door while the kids are sleeping. And it's this guy we've never met before. He introduces himself. He says he's our new neighbor. They're renovating a house across the street, and they have been since our neighbors sold it a couple months ago. And he said, "I just met the neighbors across the street, and they said you might have a rooster." I was like, "Oh, yeah." And he was like, "My wife has been feeding that thing every morning and really loves that rooster. Do you think we could have it back?" I was like, "Dude, it is your rooster. Take it." He's like, "Well, I need to build a place for it. Could you keep it for another 10 days? It's like, "Yes." So one version of this story could have looked like me telling my new neighbor that I shot the rooster. And I'm much happier with the version where I did not shoot my neighbor's rooster and it's just hanging out with our hens for a few more days.
Why did your other neighbor sound like he didn't think you should shoot the rooster?
So they really love animals.
I assume he's also a hunter if he's a genuine good old boy.
That was my assumption as well. But no, he goes to the local skeet shooting course and shoots shotguns there, like clay pigeons, multiple times a week. You know, that's how I even knew he had ammo. And yeah, he just enjoys shooting shotguns. But his wife was like, "Oh, you're not asking him about killing an animal, are you?" His friends invite him to go hunting, and he's like, "I can't do it. I would be taking the deer to an animal hospital." Like he just has a soft spot in his heart for animals. They have 3 cats that they rescued running around the house as I was there, and it really did catch me off guard. But also, I'm like, oh, I made a judgment about this guy that he could just kill anything because has this demeanor that says I could kill anything, which is interesting. Like that's yeah. Anyways,
Hmm.
it's my wild moment. Holding a gun in front of something and thinking you're gonna kill it is a weird thing.
Have you? I want to say it was, 11 years ago now. I uh, would go out to my CSA farm, like the farm I had a subscription to. I got part of the harvest for turkey processing ahead of Thanksgiving. And we processed, ended the lives of, I want to say like 90 turkeys that day.
Wow.
And like, yeah. And so I got the chance to work each sort of station, right? Including like you go in there and you catch some turkeys and you carry them out, and you would like put them in these tubes where you could, they're hanging upside down, and then you slit their throats, and then you like take them over and do the whole thing. It was an interesting experience. That was my first time ever doing that sort of thing. I would do it again. I mean, it was, but I wonder, there was a utility there where it was like you're making food for people, where I guess you weren't going to be eating the rooster. You were just trying to remove a nuisance.
Yes.
It's,
Which if we had an operating farm of some sorts, sometimes removing a nuisance is enough of a necessary thing. And there is something I do want to, this is totally not even our podcast today. I do want to get closer to what you're talking about because I eat meat. And I think there's something there that's important to me to know what I'm engaging with. I think we've distanced ourselves from death in a lot of ways, which is kind of one of the things that we've talked about Wilds in the Woods being something where we accept our death or come to terms with that. We've talked about death on several podcasts. But I think distancing ourselves from the death of the things that we're consuming that keep us alive is also not a great thing. I saw a book, I think I've got it in my cart, that's like Hunting is a Rite of Passage for Men. And I'm curious to dive into that and see what there is there.
Yeah. That's primarily why I've been a vegetarian for so long, is just like, I don't hunt. I'm not connected to that food source whatsoever, and I don't know a lick about it. So that was one of my major arguments when I first became a vegetarian. But I have been wanting to like hunt and fish lately, though. Like, we live in an area that, we could go and be great, but I haven't done it yet. But once I do, I'll have a feast.
A Wilds hunting expedition 2024.
Yeah, exactly. It's on the docket. Put it into the business model.
Yes. Oh man.
I mean, I have my next door neighbor is a genuine hunter, where he goes out for deer, for moose, for bear. He brought bear meat over last year. We can make that happen.
I like this.
Proper Wilds hunting trip.
I'm definitely in for something like that, particularly if we're able to harvest and feed our families with that meat. That sounds wonderful.
Oh baby.
So we're in the middle, well, maybe the tail end actually, of a Wild 32 that Tony tried to get to be a Wild 30 this time for some reason. I didn't ever really understand why you wanted it to be 30 days this time.
I think 28 days, just for the symmetry of that, and also for the well, last time we were really dragging by the time we got to the last several days. I'm looking like today. So today is day 29. So we're on day 29. But yeah, that was the, oh, and also because if it's less than 30 days, then we have the chance to get it on sort of a monthly cadence if we wanted to.
Okay, well those things make sense. But we keep the name Wild 32 if we do that. We would have to change it. I mean,
No, Wild 32 would be funny because everybody would be like, why is it 28 days?
Yeah.
And then you would know. And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of randomness.
Yeah, that's
yes. Okay. Well, we're actually doing 32 days for this one, and we're on day 29. So if we would have taken this route, I'm really glad actually. So this is going to get us right into it. Part of me wishes we only did 28 days because it's been very tough this go round for reasons in and outside of my control. So something that I would call resistance. And I use that word more frequently since I've known you, Tony. And there's 4 of us going through this. Billy, who's not on the podcast, is in Wild 32 with us. And the 4 of us seem to be experiencing resistance. Tony, could you introduce the idea of resistance to us and help us finish out these last 4 days, 3 days strong?
the idea of resistance is one I read in Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art, a book that has influenced me tremendously. My own book in the creative arena that I put out a couple months ago was basically me doing my best impression of The War of Art. And resistance, he describes as this natural force that pushes back on us whenever we try to do anything to improve ourselves. Right? So it could be in a new workout regimen, starting a new business, creative endeavors, trying to improve relationships. Resistance pushes us toward the comfortable and the familiar, and tries to keep us from putting in the work that can lead to growth, I guess, right? How's that for a primer?
Pretty good.
I like it.
That was really good.
Particularly the piece. I think resistance is necessary for growth. And so there's this feeling of this sucks and something is happening. Like there's a hope within the suckiness. I don't want to quite call it suffering, although the past week has not been fun. Suffering has such a spectrum to it, and I like to reserve it for things that are actually more severe on that spectrum than what I've been going through the last week. But yeah, that there seems to be a hope whenever you say that something good is happening in the midst of this not fun thing.
Oh yeah. So maybe to define Wild 32s too, we on a daily basis and for 32 days, me, Tony, Evan, and Billy check in via text, and we have a series of disciplines basically that we try to execute against. So we do 32 minutes of exercise, 10 minutes of reading, 10 minutes of sitting in silence, 10 minutes outside, substance awareness, so nothing stronger than caffeine, and also sugar awareness. And then we say what we're grateful for that day, and then also what we're feeling. So just a way to verbalize or get our feelings down on paper or in text. And so I think over the last 2 weeks and just the last week, there's been a lot of red X's. So we do like green check marks when we accomplish it, red X's when we don't. And across the board, there's been a lot of X's, but what's been cool is everybody's kind of sharing their sentiments towards why they're experiencing this resistance or what's going on in their life. People have been sick, people have been stressed out with work, wanting to have a couple beers, so there's substance abuses, getting red X's. And so it's been a really interesting thing that seemingly all 4 of us are experiencing different things in life, but all 4 of us are having some resistance, especially towards the end of this Wild 32, more so than we had, I think, last time, right? Which I think is an interesting thing to observe. But in that, I think all 4 of us are trying to lean into the group and not resist the group in and of itself. That even though we're getting red X's, we're trying to process our relationship or our experience inside of Wild 32 with these other dudes who are seemingly going through the same thing. So it's been a pretty fascinating experience across the board this time around.
Which the tendency for me in the midst of these red X's is just to not say anything. Like I would rather just have one big red exit, which is I didn't check in, than to actually go through and think about my day yesterday. That was really hard. Which is I think this is the most resistance I felt during Wild 32. I think it's also going to be the most memorable week and a half of Wild 32 out of all of the other ones, because it's been more difficult and there's been more resistance present. And there's something that happens whenever I say I don't want to check in, or I want to lean, I don't want to do Wild 32 for the first time. And hearing other people say, oh yeah, I feel that same way too.
Yeah.
I'm doing that alongside other people.
Yeah.
Something about other people knowing that I'm having a go at it that's meaningful.
I think the thing that I've struggled with most over the last few days is getting my 32 minutes of it. Well, really, like I think the whole Wild 32, that's been my, for whatever reason, my hardest thing to get in. And I'm not exactly sure why. And like, normally that's an easier thing for me to do, is getting my like exercise in. And so I've like had this general sentiment like, you candy ass, are you really putting another red X for 32 minutes of extra? Like, what's wrong with you? And so there's this like shame to actually put it in a text message, sending to 3 other dudes who are seemingly getting the check marks on that. But like my brother says, I've shared this before, like all things in life mirror all things in life, where it's like, if I'm feeling that sentiment towards exercise, somebody else is probably feeling that sentiment towards one of their other disciplines. And so I think hearing other people verbalize it via text has been helpful for me to say, okay, this is normal. I can put strategies in place to, move forward. And by the nature of the check-in, it's helping me get a little bit better or a little bit healthier with my relationship to this exercising. So yeah, it's been very, very fascinating. But that sentiment of shame is like is interesting, putting that out there, in a text message with 3 other dudes, because you don't know how they're gonna read it or what they're gonna think. But at the end of the day, I'm not that important. Not everybody's being like, oh, why isn't Josh getting his exercise? Everybody's thinking about their own thing and then just willing to help me out, get through my hurt, my humps. So
that's a really good point. And that you're not so important as one of the key pieces of Adam's return, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Yeah. Tony, what do you think?
I've been wondering why it is that we seem to be struggling more this time around, whether it's a design issue, whether it's that we're, now that we've done it a few times, it's sort of, whether the disciplines kind of lose their shine a little bit in a way that you're like, or is it just seasons of life stuff where all 3 of us happen to be, and Billy's been having the same struggles, where life is just spinning a little bit faster in a way that we're finding it harder to, I guess it's even pay attention to the disciplines and put enough intention toward them that they're getting knocked out the way we would want them to. And I know for me, I mean, hell, I had to check in for like 3 days the other day because I had failed to check in, which I can't believe I let myself do that. But that's how resistance works, right? It's like Tim Ferriss, I remember from his podcast, listening to him. I mean, this was probably like 8 years ago. I was listening to how he talked about it, of like the idea of I can let myself fail one day to do the thing, but if I fail 2 days, then I'm just not, the odds of me going back to it, that habit or that practice drop dramatically, right? And I guess that is the power of what we're doing here, of, like as I was, when I'm doing this thing well, I'm checking in basically before 7 a.m. on how I did the day before, right? So I'm like starting my day thinking about the previous day. But if I didn't do well the previous day,
Yeah.
then I'm less eager to show up and start the day by showing how I failed the previous day. So then I put it off, which then I think probably makes it less likely that I'm taking care of business today. So then by the end of the day, it's like, oh shit, I failed yesterday and I failed today,
Yeah.
which then makes it
Yeah.
less like I'm less eager to do it even then. And yeah, man, it has been interesting to watch my own mindset and
Yeah.
almost like a fragility, even given my own experience and understanding, presumed understanding of the territory we're occupying.
Yeah. I was thinking about how you started, Tony, in terms of like what's new. Is this a design issue? So I feel like I deduced the current situation down to like 4 things, which is not like a design issue. The first one being is our first 2 Wild 32s, me, Tony, and Evan, we did the Wild 32, I think in, I don't know, March timeframe. So it was our first experience with it. So it was like new, it was fun, it was something that we hadn't done before, especially as a group. Then the second was also fun. It felt very in preparation of a big adventure, so much more necessary to do it. Now, this third one is all 4 of us have done it together. We don't have anything we're preparing for. And to your point about resistance, it pushes you to the comfort. We know that it's acceptable to put a red X in the group, and we will be accepted for it, even though there potentially is some shame. So because there is comfort with the 4 of us, I feel like there's a greater likelihood that there's a higher tolerance for red X's, which is like a fascinating thing to ponder. So maybe it's just our own internal conviction to hold each other to higher standards, which maybe that is a design element. I do think all 3 of us are in a very interesting phase of life, new endeavors, new things, just very, very busy. And I think season change, like, I think not to acknowledge or to not acknowledge that seems short-sighted. But
You
yeah,
say the
those,
actual season?
yeah, like season change, like we're moving it, like time change, all that stuff. We had spring, we had, late night, late summer days. So that's what I deduced it to.
So I'm going to agree with you on the design thing, and I actually think it's like proof of concept as far as design goes, that I'm a better person during this season change, during everything that's going on, because I have Wild 32 than if I didn't have it, even if I'm more comfortable with people or putting more X's or
Yeah.
like I'm encouraged by the design, particularly I think the most important piece is actually the check-in, not exercise or sitting in silence or it is the process of showing up and being present to one another on a daily basis. And that piece of the design aspect has been really cool. And then this is more of a question for you, Tony. How can you tell when something is resistance versus, I don't know what the other word would be, but there is the season change that's like very top of mind for me, and it being dark at 5:30 here. And there's an aspect of that that seems to be like sometimes you just need to go to bed earlier or not, like what is a season of rest, or like the full moon being gone for a night. And does this Wild 32 exist during a time or a season when it's actually like doing the things, getting green check marks is actually counterproductive to flowing with what is, which would be slowing down, not worrying about your exercise today? Or is that just giving into resistance? I genuinely don't know the answer
Great.
because I'm like, part of me is very keen to say, you don't need to do the exercise. Just relax. The seasons change. You're going to get back to another day where you can exercise again. Just like chill out. And another part of me is like, that chill out attitude is going to lead to no exercise, eating whatever you want. Like, what is what's the path? What is the way? Point me in the right direction.
It really is interesting that we're all feeling something similar, and the fact that we are wild animals wearing pants, uh, heading toward winter. There is a question like, are we inclined to start to think about hibernating or like winding down, that on a primal biological level
Storing
where,
up some fat intentionally. Get us
yeah,
through the
I
winter.
mean,
Yeah.
that makes sense. The way I think about the question you're bringing up is the difference between resistance and life. You know, that sometimes life things happen that demand so much time, energy from us that other things have to go to a back burner. Right? And part of the intention with Wild 32 is to help keep these things that we want to stay consistent on over time front of mind. You know, like far enough up on the burner that they keep getting done when they otherwise might not. So I guess to answer your question, I mean, I know for me, it's largely been about resistance, even as I have, you know, some other major life things going on with, you know, starting a new business and all that. Like to Josh's point of like that, am I really failing to do this today? Am I really failing to do that today? I know for me, it is still a matter of I just didn't do it. You know, it's it's not that I totally lacked bandwidth. It's that I made choices where I look at, okay, should I meditate or should I scroll? And it's like, oh, I think I'll just do that for right now. I'll do that later. Right. That's resistance, you know. But I mean, for me, it's typically I can just tell. Like we could just know, all right, shouldn't maybe it's the sort of thing that requires practice where it's like just knowing like, okay, I just lack bandwidth in a way that, yeah, it's just not happening and that's fine. But ultimately, I'd also say it doesn't necessarily matter. And that's kind of the idea of just like being gentle with ourselves and saying, it's okay if we didn't do it yesterday. We're showing up today and we're taking another crack at it. Right. So like ultimately that distinction maybe isn't all that important. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Me and my brothers and dad it's pretty similar. We do this thing called Exodus 90 and we meet every Friday and we have a series of disciplines. It's just like 4, but we talk about a lot about just beginning again, right? Like you could have a big fat goose egg, you don't knock anything out. And it's just like, what do you do? Like you can dwell in that moment. You can have all that like negative self-talk, or you can just be like, okay, well, I'm going to put one foot in front of the other, today and go from there. So it is, really, really similar in that we can get worked up or beat ourselves up for really like, again, like you're not going to do that, but to think about the continuum of all of our failures when we're processing a decision in a given moment seems like a monumental thing to get over. Right. So all it is a decision to move forward or to not move forward. And that's about it. To have all that baggage come into every single decision seems like an unnecessary torment or torture of a single decision today.
Well said.
Yep. All right. Start at 0 today.
And again.
Begin again. That's it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. Anything else on resistance?
It's never going away. We will face it each and every day of our lives. Pressfield talks about it as a nefarious thing. He describes it as evil. I disagree with him on that point of that. In that because it's just a natural force. He calls it evil because it can like keep us from doing good stuff and can lead us toward doing destructive stuff. Yeah. But I tend to think of it just as an indifferent force like gravity, where it's like each day we show up to do that deal again, that battle against resistance. And if we win, great. And if we don't, that's fine. We'll do it again tomorrow. Let's win tomorrow or today, because tomorrow's not today. So let's win today. Go team.
Go team. And then
just seemed appropriate.
I'm going to say one more thing, even though that was a beautiful closer. I think it's actually a good thing, not even neutral, because I don't know that growth happens without it. So if growth is a good thing and resistance is necessary to growth, I could be opening a whole can of worms here, but to your point, it would be interesting to do an episode breaking down what it would look like or what mindset we would take on if it was evil, if it was neutral, and if it was good. Yeah, I tend to be more hopeful if resistance is a good thing and not even a neutral thing, just to say something's happening here. There's somewhere you're going that is something like growth whenever you run into this thing, and that's positive.
Absolutely. Yeah, where your resistance is probably also exactly where you need to be going.
That's a good way to end it. Thanks for listening to the Unrationed podcast. Check out wildsandthewoods.com if you'd like to be updated on what we're up to in 2023. I've said this at the end of the last 5 episodes that we have some exciting stuff, and it's because before we record this podcast, we do a planning meeting where we're actually talking about more than just this podcast, and I'm genuinely excited about what's to come in 2023. We would like to go to the woods with you if you're listening to this. So there's going to be actually an opportunity to go in person with us into the wilderness and work with us in some other ways. So anyways, wildsandthewoods.com. Email is the best way to keep in touch with what we're doing with this whole deal.
Or our LinkedIn group. We have a new LinkedIn group.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you find that?
Hell if I know.
We'll figure out. If you can find it. If not, we'll figure out how to simply ask you to join that in the next episode. Or do you know it?
Yeah, you could DM us, but it's unrationed. The group is unrationed. So, yeah.
Yes. Cool. That's it. Thanks for listening.